Hi everyone, it's Alyssa and this is Always Cinema Chic. So today I am going to go over my 10 least favorite movies from 2020. So this is not the worst because who am I to say what the worst actually is? But these are the movies that I saw in 2020 that I just didn't like at all. Like all of these movies in some way missed the mark for me. And this was such a weird year, obviously, because we didn't get to see movies in the movie theater. The last movie I saw was Uncut Gems on January 1st of 2020. So that was the only movie that I actually saw the whole year in the movie theater. And so our choices were a little bit different than what they normally were. But with that said, I would say there were still more movies that I saw that came out in 2020 that I liked than what I didn't like. So these are the ones that I thought were the most disappointing. So first off, there are a couple that didn't quite make the list, but I feel like I need to mention it because in some way either they missed the mark or they were just really disappointing to me. So I'm going to start with the movie Emma, which was something that I was looking forward to so much. And I heard so many positive things. And this is a movie that tons of people loved, and it was gorgeous. The costume design was perfect. The cinematography was absolutely beautiful. It was just the way Anya Taylor-Joy portrayed Emma just wasn't ever the way that I saw Emma in my own head when I read the book. And then also with what I associate with Gwyneth Paltrow's performance. So that is one of those instances of my own personal nostalgia kind of taking over. But I just didn't like this. It felt very cold to me. And I never looked at that story as a cold story. It's very immature. It's an immature story, but it's not a cold story. And I don't dislike the characters. And I found myself disliking more of the characters than I normally would. So that was just a real surprise for me. Also, the movie Ava with Jessica Chastain. I saw that recently, and I love Jessica Chastain, but oh my God, it was all over the place. It was kind of boring. The action sequences, they were okay. This went straight to Netflix, but I don't know. I feel like this is one of those movies that Netflix bought because they were taking advantage of COVID and not because they had bought it originally. But yeah, that movie was just missed the mark in every way. It wasn't suspenseful. I didn't really care about the character, and that was really disappointing. The other movie that I had a problem with that I wanted to like so much was Antebellum. I did a whole video on that, basically showing my disappointment and how it was just lying to the audience. And then lastly, it didn't make my top 10 least favorite, but Hillbilly Elegy was just really boring to me. I never felt like I got attached to the characters. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel genuine. It just wasn't up my alley. And once again, I know a lot of people like that movie, but it just wasn't for me. So I'm going to start off with the top 10 least favorite movies of 2020. And coming in at number 10 is a movie called The Lie. And so this is from the Welcome to the Blumhouse series that was on Amazon, where they did all of the horror movies. And this was okay in the beginning, and it started off in a visually appealing way. It wasn't at all a horror movie, but I can get over that when you kind of lie to me about what the genre is. But at the same time, when I got to the ending of the movie, which of course I will not spoil, the ending was so bad. It was so bad on every level that it's the perfect example of that kind of movie where you just are not going to like the entirety of the movie because of the ending. And so it's about a young teenage girl, and she gets into a fight with her friend, and then she pushes her friend over a bridge and kills her, and her parents basically try to cover up the murder, as one does as parents. And it starred Joey King, and she wasn't likable to me. Peter Skarsgård was in it, and I always like him, but it was just Not a good movie. And then coming in at number 9 is a movie called Evil Eye, which is also part of the Amazon Welcome to the Blumhouse. I promise this is the last one from that series because I actually like the other two films that they put out. They were both pretty good, at least. Black Box probably being my favorite of the four. But Evil Eye was a movie that I wanted once again to be a good movie because the premise sounded like it could be somewhat interesting. It's about an Indian mother who was physically assaulted when she was younger. She was stalked by this guy, and she believes that the spirit of this person who stalked her, who assaulted her, is basically in another guy's body, and now he is trying to marry her daughter so that he can get to her. And so the premise is very psychologically based. You don't know if the mom is just imagining this, is she losing her mind? But the budget on this film was so low, which is not often a problem. I mean, I've seen Tangerine that barely had a budget at all, and it was shot so beautifully, and it was really engaging, and the camera movement was really dynamic. So it really doesn't have anything to do with that. It felt like I was watching a TV movie. The transitions were really cheesy. There were a lot of just kind of like outdoor established shots, which you did not need. It felt like I was watching not even a TV movie, more like a TV show that was playing on a network. So it was sort of at that level. The special effects and everything, they were okay, but really it also came down to the acting, and the acting was okay in the movie. The guy who was the presumed bad guy and boyfriend, he was the worst of all of the actors. I thought he was pretty obvious in his performance and took it sort of over the top. And the daughter was okay. But the person who I really liked the most was the mother, played by Sarita Choudhury. And her performance was the only thing that kept me somewhat engaged in the movie. And her performance is the reason that this movie is actually not higher up on my list. So, coming in at number 8 is Fantasy Island. I love a good cheesy horror movie, so I didn't walk into this with any bad feelings. There's cheesy, good horror movies, and then there are ones that are just bad and fall flat and use very tired tropes, and that's exactly what this was. And it felt like a movie where you're trying to use an IP that everyone recognizes by name, but really no one I know has ever watched Fantasy Island, the TV show. So it wasn't really a selling point, and the movie almost had nothing to do with the TV show because the TV show wasn't necessarily horror, and not in the way that they presented it. And it's a group of people who win some kind of contest and have to come to this island, and of course everything goes horribly wrong, and they've all been chosen to be there for a reason. So very cliche. The acting was noticeably bad. I didn't care about one single character in the entire movie. So the whole thing was pretty much a waste to me. Coming in at number 7 is Spencer Confidential. And to be honest, I didn't even finish this movie. I probably have about 30 minutes left, but I can't bring myself to go back to it. I mean, it stars Mark Wahlberg. It's a Peter Berg movie. This shouldn't be bad. I typically like movies that Peter Berg makes, but this just felt like such a tired old movie. It felt like something that was made 15 years ago. The way the camera was moving, trying to be edgy, those were camera movements from 15 years ago for movies that were trying to be edgy. I just thought the acting was too much. Eliza Schlesinger, is that how you say her name? She was okay, but what a tropey character. I mean, there was nothing about this that engaged me in any way. And it's the only movie that I couldn't bear to finish in 2020. So, I mean, you might think it would be higher on the list, but the other movies I had to finish just to see how bad they really actually were. So, coming in at number 6, and I would not do this necessarily because it is a Netflix Christmassy movie. But I'm putting Holiday at number 6 because it's one of those movies that wants to be a traditional sort of like Christmas movie that would be on Hallmark, but it can't be on Hallmark because they actually curse in the movie and they try to make it a little bit edgy, but it wasn't edgy at all. It was over the top. It played into just the worst caricatures of what men and women could be. And it wasn't a Christmas movie, actually. It was like every single holiday. This they're not even friends, but they just agreed that they would be each other's date on every holiday. So it's a really, really silly premise, which obviously you can get past that if it's enjoyable enough, but this wasn't. Emma Roberts is in it, and I don't know who the male actor is, but they had zero chemistry. So when you're making a movie like this and it looks painful that they are in these scenes together, you've basically got the worst pairing ever. And when one of the plot lines of the movie is the two main characters don't know if they actually had sex with each other because they were so drunk that both of them don't remember, I'm out. Like, I'm just out of this movie. You're trying to be a cutesy movie, but you're trying to be an edgy movie. You have no idea what you want to be. And on every level, for me, it just really fell flat. The next one up is another Netflix movie. I feel like there are a lot of Netflix movies here, but that makes sense because that's where we saw a lot of new movies. So this was Dangerous Lies with Camila Mendes. And, I thought maybe this could be a fun, thrillery movie. It felt so long to me. It was a movie that just never ended. And I don't think it was actually that long. And so just to give you an idea about what the movie's about, from the page, it actually says, when a wealthy elderly man dies and unexpectedly leaves his estate to his new caregiver, she's drawn into a web of deception and murder if she's going to survive. So it's one of those things where you can't trust anyone. Can she even trust her husband? And the ending was just so over the top, absurd. The acting was really bad. And that's the thing, is that even if a movie doesn't have a big budget, the acting never has to be bad. That doesn't cost anything. So I can always get past things where it's, maybe questionable in terms of like the style of the film, or, because their budget wasn't that high. But this movie, it wasn't like that. It was just the two main characters didn't have good chemistry. It was one of those movies where you couldn't trust anyone, but the ending felt very obvious, even from the beginning of the film. So it was just super unenjoyable and very, it was not a memorable movie at all. I think I saw that during the summer, and I can only tell you kind of like the ending scenes, what happened. Everything else sort of just like faded out of my memory. Coming in at number 4, another Netflix movie. So this one is After We Collided, which is the sequel to After. I had originally seen the movie After because it was actually recommended to me, and it does have a connection to Wuthering Heights. They say some of the lines from Wuthering Heights, and a lot of people know that's actually my favorite book. It's my favorite story. But this was this was not Wuthering Heights at all, and the second one was even worse. This feels like 50 Shades of Grey, but for teenagers. It's very disturbing, the kind of back and forth with these two characters' relationship. The acting is just, once again, the acting is so bad. Their chemistry is so bad. These are all films that really hinge on you believing that two characters are together and that they make a believable couple. And these two people just had no chemistry at all. I know one of the actors, I forget his name, but he is Joseph Fiennes, not cousin, nephew. And nope. Nope, nope, nope. He probably I don't think he should be acting. He's not that good. But this was just one of those over the top, are they back together? Are they not back together? It seemed like she was angry at him because he didn't tell something. There was like a secret, but I didn't remember what the secret was because I hadn't seen the first movie recently. And so it just didn't do a good job of having the audience understand why, they don't like each other and why they're not together. And then they throw in this one other guy who I suppose is meant to be like the Edgar character from Wuthering Heights, but he's so dorky. He's so awful. There's nothing that really has any comparison to Wuthering Heights. The main character is quite rich, which is sort of the whole opposite point of what Wuthering Heights is about. So that was just a complete disaster for me. But even more of a disaster is at number 3, Valley Girl, which is a movie that I completely thought I would love because I love the 1980s version of Valley Girl. It's cheesy, it's very 80s. The lingo is always so much fun. They ruined everything about this movie. So first of all, it felt like it was trying to be a sort of version of La La Land, which right there, obviously you have lost me. That is one of my favorite movies of all time. And you trying to sort of pull the color palette, but not pull the depth of the story with it was actually really annoying. The people who were singing, the cast that was singing, they did not really have such good voices. And these were all recorded singing voices. So, sort of surprising to me that someone would take those takes of them singing a recorded song and say, yeah, this is great. Also, the dancing was really, really basic. So if you're going to have a musical and you're going to have choreography, well, I really hope that choreography is worth it and memorable. And this didn't have any of that. It even had one of the friends from La La Land is the main actress in the film. I think her name is Jessica Rothke or something like that. And she just, for me, doesn't have the kind of impact to carry a film like that. She's okay as a side character, but I don't feel like she works that well as a lead character. And the only thing I liked this movie was seeing Alicia Silverstone and her being like the grown-up version of the character telling the story. Those were the only scenes where I even had a small kind of smile on my face, but this was just scene after scene of stealing from a variety of different musicals, but doing it all really poorly. None of the music is original music. They just take music from the 80s, and then they do really poor versions of those types of songs, like Take on Me. Like, pick any movie from the 80s that was somewhat famous, and it's probably a dance number in this film. I thought also the male lead was super boring. Like, how could you compare him to Nicolas Cage and think you did a good job casting? I mean, Nicolas Cage is so far out there, but that is exactly what you want to see. Like, I wanted to see a character who was just weird and bizarre out there, not in the same way as Nick Cage, so that it wasn't like the exact same character, but something different. And it just seemed like the guy that they cast was the most preppy person on the planet that they just put in leather and was like, yeah, he looks cool, edgy, and punk right now. So it was just, for me, a disastrous movie. But these two were even worse. So coming in at number 2, I had to actually re-look at the name of the title because I want it out of my head as fast as possible. And this is another Netflix Christmas movie. And I would not put this up there except for the fact that this is something that I wouldn't want anyone to have to sit through because it was just so poorly made. So it's called A New York Christmas Wedding, which the title implies, that it's probably going to be a happier movie. But it's about a woman who is facing an engagement to a really rich guy. But then, really, she has been secretly in love with this other woman from when she was a teenager. And I knew that was the premise of the movie going into it. I thought that sounded like, oh, that could be interesting and there's going to be time travel. The movie was so serious, and I didn't think it was going to feel so somber throughout the entire film. And it was bad and it was slow paced. And then it got to the ending, and the ending made my stomach actually like curl up and cringe. And it was just the worst ending. When you find out who her guardian angel is, it was at that moment that I was like, yep, this movie is right there at the top of the list. And it's once again, it's shot in a way that is really, really boring. All of these medium shots, some scenes just felt way too long and dragged out. This isn't about money. This is about a vision, which was clearly not here. And I feel bad because I feel like this could have been an important story to someone. And that makes me feel even worse, saying that I didn't think it was well made. The acting was just, once again, so bad. The couple that should be together, that you want to be together, the chemistry was just so bad, and it just, you could feel how uncomfortable they felt. And that is not fun to watch. But nothing is going to top the number one movie for me. And this might hit the list as being one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. And it's called The Last Thing I Wanted, or The Last Thing He Wanted. Sorry. And that's on Netflix. And this was the worst because it had a cast that should never be in the worst movie of the year. So this is Anne Hathaway. It's Ben Affleck. It's a novel from Joan Didion. Everything about this should be good, or at the very least, average, right? There should be nothing about it that is bad. The editing in this film is confusing, and it's not in a Chris Nolan kind of purposeful, confusing way. It's just the scenes don't string together in a coherent way. Anne Hathaway can be so good. I just today saw the movie Lockdown on HBO Max, and I liked her in it. And I usually do like her, but I've noticed every few roles, she just misses the mark so greatly. And she's playing this journalist where she got this one last wish from her father. And it's basically like her work and what she's investigating and this thing that her dad wants. They correspond and they connect, and she learns more about her dad as a result. But you can figure out who the bad guy is in the first 5 minutes of the movie. It's very obvious what's going on, but the intricacies of the story are very confusing. It just does not have a coherent feel at all. And I can't believe they actually put this out. I'm sure they did, because you have the name recognition, but all in all, it was one of the worst movies that I've ever seen. And Willem Dafoe is in it. I mean, it bothers me to say I didn't like a movie that had Anne Hathaway. Well, I don't like Ben Affleck that much, but I wouldn't say I didn't like a movie because he was in it. He's not a horrible actor. And Willem Dafoe, I would be like, there's no way that's the number one worst movie of the year. But it was just painfully slow, edited very poorly. The acting was not particularly good, except Willem Dafoe actually was okay in it, because he usually is. But that didn't save the film at all. So that's my list for 2020 of my least favorite movies. I would love to hear what you guys saw this past year. What a weird year. And what were some of the things that you saw that you really didn't like? Now, I don't go out there and purposefully start watching movies that I think I'm not going to like. So there were some that I didn't see, like Bloodshot got, some of the worst reviews, but from my perspective, I was never going to watch a movie with Vin Diesel anyway. So it's just, I'm sure it would have made the top 10 list. I could almost guarantee it. It was one of those movies I didn't want to put myself through it. So, yeah, once again, I would love to hear what you guys think. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet, please do subscribe. And I hope that everyone has a good day. Bye, guys.